Happy Thursday, everybody. See, I was telling Mitch before we started that I can never figure out the way to do that sounding awkward. So that's my hello. Hey, Mitch.
Howdy.
On a scale of like 1 to really terrible, where was I?
I thought that was pretty great. It's very casual and relaxed and, like a conversation.
Okay.
So right. I didn't answer your question. I'd say like a 7. That's pretty good.
All right, good. I should start writing down an introduction because it would probably do you more justice, and probably at the same time do myself a little bit of justice so I don't sound like a moron. I just yell Happy Thursday.
You could just have like a standard introduction, like a canned thing that you just say every time.
Oh, yeah.
It's not boring at all.
Or it can evolve and then actually have maybe like, some audio and some video clips, and then we just fades out and we're here. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm excited about this. I know a lot of other people are. Got a bunch of questions sent over to ask you, so that'll be fun. And it'll be fun to not only talk about what you're doing now, but your past. So you spent time with James and Sarah over at Black Project, so I love those two, and it'll be cool to hear your perspective on being there.
Story.
That what?
My side of the story.
That's it. Your side of the story. And then we're also going to chat about Genetic Drift.
Nice.
Which I'm drinking right now and loving. So it'll be really cool to get into just what that beer is, how you came up with the concept, how you came up with the final product, and then we're gonna talk. We're gonna ask some of those questions, and then we'll get into some more of the process stuff. But
cool.
So I guess let's start from the beginning. When you were a wee little lad. I guess the standard beer interview question is, when did you fall in love with craft beer?
Yeah, I was in college, and kind of typical story, like pretty much the same as everybody else you could probably guess. Staying in an apartment with 3 other guys. A couple of them, actually all of them, were older than me, and so I was 20. Actually, I moved in when I was 19. Okay. And so these, older fellas, they're like 2 years older than me, were buying like Two Hearted and Killian's and Oberon and that kind of stuff. And I thought I hated beer at that point. I was drinking like Jägermeister. Oh, God. And just awful beverages because I didn't know any better. And I didn't like beer, so I thought. But these guys just kept bringing them home, and then they'd throw them in the fridge, and I'd be like, typical college roommate, and drink their alcohol because, they had me out of whatever horrible drink I was drinking, so I'd grab one of theirs. So I think Killian, I think Killian's was kind of the first beer that, I don't know, I realized that I actually could like beer. And then after that, very quickly, Two Hearted and Oberon, most of the Bell's portfolio, actually. And then Founders very quickly got in there, especially being young and poor. Founders beers were pretty high alcohol. So you got a good, for craft, back then you got a really good bang for your buck. It was like a $8 or $9 6-pack of Dirty Bastard. And,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, you drink like 3 of them and you're like, well, I'm good for the night. Like, I couldn't even drink 1 now, probably to completion. But so yeah, I just started drinking those beers with those guys, and then we all bought a brewing kit together. So we went to Siciliano's Market, which was the only homebrew store in Grand Rapids at the time, and bought a kit. And we had no idea what we were doing. None of us read any of the instructions that came with it at all. We just got together one day and we're like, okay, let's brew beer. So like, we did everything wrong because we were reading the instructions as we were going instead of like doing a little bit of research. But the first batch was, I'd say, drinkable then. It god awful, but It was drinkable then, and it had alcohol in it, so that was good. But we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do with 48 bottles? And then they were gone like 4 days later. And so like, okay, I guess we have to brew again because we're out of beer. So I just got to the point where most of us, started brewing. So out of the four of us, three of us are now professional brewers or in the industry somehow, and then the other guy is a pastor or a priest, actually. So
I found that these priests drink more than brewers do.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've hung out with some priests that are our age, and those guys pound.
They can drink for sure. So yeah, I don't know what happened, but one of the guys works at a brewery in Holland. The other guy went and worked for Bell's for like 3 or 4 years, and now he works at Bee Nectar in Ferndale. He's a mead maker now. But yeah, so it's pretty crazy how we all ended up. This was 9 years ago for perspective. Yeah.
How was that? I guess that's being around founders. I guess that's a pretty good. For me, they're like one of the standards. Like they just brew great beer consistently. I mean, was founders an influence for you coming through this whole thing? I mean,
totally. Yeah, I mean, I'd say Bell's and Founders were equally. Actually, Founders might have been more influential to me because they were in town here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
So Monday nights were cheap pint night there, and you could get a pint of basically any tier 1 beer for, I think it was like $2.50 or something like that back then. And so again, cheap beer, cheap good beer. We realized,
Yeah.
Go there every single Monday. So Founders probably would be more influential just because of that fact that they were in town. They exposed me to a ton of beer. So yeah.
What was that first beer you guys brewed? Do you remember?
I do remember. It was called. We had a name for it and everything. This was back when name shit. But this was the Minotaur Dunkel. It was a Dunkel Vice, and we were like, we just bought like a kit, just standard kit. But I don't remember how we came up with the name the Minotaur. But
that was my next question.
Oh yeah, I made like the logo and I made
yeah,
ridiculous in hindsight, but it was fun. I mean, we had a blast with it. So, in some ways, I miss those days a lot because it's just 100% fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's 9 years ago. So I guess when did you? I guess what were you doing in school at the time? Anything that would have been related at all to what you're doing now?
I started off going for graphic design. So I did a semester of that and realized that I was not going to be, it wasn't going to be my career. I just wasn't good enough at it compared to like everybody else in class. So oddly enough, I switched my major to criminal justice to do like youth services or something like that. That was quotes, youth, which I don't really know what that means in hindsight, but I wanted to do like counseling or something like that. And so I graduated in 2008, which was right when the economy basically totally collapsed. And that whole industry took like a 60% cut in staffing. And honestly, by the time I got my degree, I also didn't want to be a part of that field because it's super, super corrupt. Criminal justice, that whole field. Yeah, you could just tell in classes that it was going to be rough.
It drove me nuts.
It just wasn't a good fit for me. And I knew that about halfway through, but at that point I was like, I have to just finish because at this point it would just be wasted if I didn't finish. So,
yeah.
So I finished up and then promptly did not go into that field. At that point, I got a job at a new homebrew store in Grand Rapids called O'Connor's Homebrew Supply.
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't know, from the South. I think they're from North Carolina, and so they just, they both lived there for a while. But there's a husband and wife team, Ben and Allison, and Ben lived in Grand Haven. He grew up in Grand Haven, and so when they decided they wanted to open a homebrew store, he was like, "Oh, nobody's doing it in Grand Rapids. We'll just move there and open it there." So yeah, I got a job with them. At that point, I had only brewed like 2 all grain batches, but I'd probably brewed about 50 extract batches. So I learned very quickly after I got the job there. I mean, I was brewing 4 or 5 days a week while I was working there. So
yeah,
way more than I could drink or anybody really could drink, but I just wanted experience. So yeah, that was a great experience. Learned how to, that was probably the best thing for recipe formulation.
Sure.
Because you just sit at a computer all day or you brew all day and, write recipes for people on the fly, basically. I mean, I did that day in, day out there. So you really get a good feel of what all the different grains contribute to the flavor and yeast and all the ingredients. And they were much more limited then than they are now. So it's a huge selection now. But when we started, we probably only had about 30 grains and 20 different kinds of hops. And, you just kind of go from there. But
is there something from that, the more that I brew, the more I realize that I want to use less grains.
Oh, totally, me too.
Is there something, I guess, this might be just more of like an outside of the box question, but as we continue to develop all these new grains and I find myself being drawn back to just like Pilsner.
The basics. Me too.
Just always. And okay, I guess you do find yourself that way, but I mean, is there something you learned in your time as formulating recipes, using maybe multiple grains, different that you apply now to this style of beer?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's definitely an evolution going on there. When I first started brewing like all grain and even extract batches, I was doing, maybe 8 grains, 8 different kinds of grain
right.
Batch. And I think the longer and longer I brewed, that list started getting shorter and shorter. Now, most of my beers are Pilsner, wheat, oats.
Right.
Like that's it. Sometimes rye.
Yeah.
And so it's very basic now, very, very basic. And I don't know if that's because I decided to focus on one kind of genre of beer, or if that's just how I evolved with my brewing over time. It's just really basic grains.
And, I give that a lot of thought because I noticed, I'm doing that with the wild style beers.
Yeah.
Like Forest and Maine, when I was up there brewing beer with them, I looked around at all the fermenters and everything's basically Pilsner and a little bit of oat, a little bit of wheat. And so I'm noticing that everyone's kind of going back to this, especially the brewers that are doing a lot of mixed fermentation. Do you think it's because you just want to let the culture really shine?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I also just think that the more I brew beer, the more I just appreciate a good basic malt profile, especially in these beers. Obviously, when I drink I don't know, Founder's Porter or something like that, I can really appreciate the fact that they use all kinds of different malt in that.
Oh yeah.
But it's appropriate for the style. So yeah, I don't know. It is a weird phenomenon that I've noticed though.
Yeah.
But I like it. I just like a good clean grain base. That way I can let the yeast express itself.
Yeah.
Also, get a good Pilsner malt base. I love Pilsner. I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's nice to go to where, my closet, I call it now, where I brew as I'm piloting beers. It's just I just have sacks of Pilsner there, and I'm going to brew today. So I just open a sack of Pilsner, maybe throw in a little bit of wheat, maybe, and there it goes. So It's nice. Now, let's talk about genetic drift before we keep going, because I'm drinking it now and I'm looking at it, and it's so I guess specifically with this beer, and I'll show it for the camera. Oh, do the logo here.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. It is, oof, wow. So it's got a really like great, I love like the foamy head. It's really nice lacing. Has a little bit of a meringue when you pour it.
Very unlike the beer that I'm drinking right now. It's like totally.
Yeah.
We'll
talk about that a little bit later too. But
yeah.
I guess what is genetic drift? It's an American farmhouse ale, and I'm going to read from the bottle.
Yeah, go for it.
But as these things can mean so many things to different people.
I kind of, well, you just read it. We'll go from there.
It's an open fermented saison, dry hopped with Belma and Saphir. And you got this really cool little stamp, wild and lab grown cultures. I'll show the bottle again. It's open fermented. And yeah, so this is.
And I forgot to write the batch number and the ABV on there.
I was gonna read that too, but that's all right.
This is that's batch 4. Okay. ABV I think is 7.1.
Okay. So what I love about farmhouse beer is that you can call it farmhouse beer and it kind of just encapsulates a lot.
Yeah.
But to you, what is genetic drift? I mean, what comprises it? What was the concept behind this beer?
So I call it an American farmhouse ale just because I have like I can't really figure out what else to call it, honestly. Like I can call it a saison, but that in itself means so many different things. Right. Just like farmhouse, but I feel like farmhouse is a little bit broader of a term than saison. And that's just my personal, I don't know, feelings from what I've drank. But so genetic drift is essentially a American farmhouse ale. So it's really defined by my process more than any other beer. So I just piloted a whole bunch of batches while I was still at Former Future Black Project. James gave me a couple barrels just to totally mess around with and do whatever I wanted. So I used just a couple of different methods there, like low to no oxygen fermentation. What else? Pitching a ridiculous amount of bacteria and Brett compared to, the ratio of Brett to stack is much greater in that beer. And then what else? I don't know. Just a couple other random, really hot pitching. So normally I knock out at about 85 for this beer, and I pitch at 85. So fast fermentation, low mash temp. This was mashed at 146.
Wow.
Pilsner malt, wheat, rye, oats. So super basic. And actually I think I had Vienna in that batch too. Like one bag of Vienna. Just for color, basically, and a little bit of malt character. So really this beer is defined by my weird methods that I've just grown to like, and I know they're different from what a lot of other people are doing. And I've gotten a different yeast profile from that, and I just like the fact that it tastes so different from most other American farmhouse ales or saisons or whatever you want to call it. It's really just like a straight up wild beer,
Yeah, you talked about process, and so we'll get into that a little bit. Maybe we should do it. Maybe we should weave in and out of your timeline here. But but you don't have a brew house.
Nope.
So the beer is produced offsite, and the fermentation is done on-site, right?
Yeah. So we could just start at the beginning, I guess. So no brew house. You're basically looking at the whole brewery right now. Well, most of the brewery. This is what it looks like, other than the Hoover tanks, which are that way.
And the forklift?
Oh, wait. Yep, the forklift. That's straight behind you. Don't forget that. No, so I basically contract work. So I'll send a brewery my recipe. A lot of the time I'll order grain and just have it shipped to that brewery, the host brewery. Their brewer will brew the work for me, which is really, really nice. I used to like brewing, and then I brewed for James and Sarah at Black Project like 4+ days a week. And so I kind of don't like brewing anymore. So anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. Uh, I have them brew the recipe. I show up with a truck and pick it up. Most of them are within like 3 or 4 miles from my brewery here in Grand Rapids. And I literally just show up right before they knock out with a big square Hoover tank. They knock out into that tank. I drive it back here, unload it with the forklift, and then I pitch my yeast and bacteria. So when I have the host brewery knockout, I do a whole bunch of things. I tell them, don't use any oxygen whatsoever when you're knocking out. It's really difficult, and I have to remind them like every single time because everybody's so used to hooking up oxygen. So I tell them, don't hook up O2. Try to get as close as you can to 85 degrees, which is pretty tough for a lot of brewers to knock out that warm just based on their system. You know, most of them on their water, and like the beer's like 60 or 65 right out of the chiller. So they got to throttle back the water most of the time, or turn their pump up faster than they normally would. So they pump out into the tank. I bring it here. I take the lid off because there's a big manway on top of the tank. Pitch my yeast and bacteria, and I don't do cell counting. I don't do anything. It's very much like inconsistent, 100% by feel. So I basically just collect a bunch of yeast from the previous batch of genetic drift, and I pitch it all into the next batch and leave the top open at that point. So it's open before fermentation begins, and then it's open all throughout fermentation. And then I usually put the cap on the tank probably about 5 to 10 days, just depending on how fermentation is going.
How much variation are you seeing because of that open fermentation process? Or
I can't really say how much variation for sure. Every batch is pretty different, like significantly different. But you can tell it's all the same base beer. Like you can tell it's the same beer, but every batch is pretty different. Like batch 4, what you're drinking now, the pH dropped a decent amount on that one. I hopped to about 25 IBUs every batch.
Oh, wow.
And I'm not sure, maybe some other bacteria got hold a little stronger, but this dropped down to like 3.9 pH or something. And normally genetic drift is sitting about 4.2. So not sure what happened. I really like the little bit of acidity in it though. So I'll probably keep rolling with that. But so yeah, I have no idea what kind of variation I get, because that's just part of the deal, is that it's never going to be the same beer. Every single batch is going to be different.
Is there a freedom in that, or do you find it's a little more maybe stressful in that people are going to expect genetic drift to be somewhat similar from batch to batch? Or is it like, hey, this is different and it's meant to be, and you're like, this is I guess, is it freedom or is it handcuffs? Like, is it
equally both? It's equally both. When we first started, nobody cared. They were just like, yes, I love that every batch is different. Now it's a little more difficult because we're bringing people who are not like super inside the tiny little beer bubble that we're in. So as we bring more of those people in, it's a little confusing. It's a little more confusing for them to embrace the change. From every single batch is going to be different. And I dry hop every batch with different hops too. So
even throwing more wrenches in their plans.
Yeah,
I mean, people are used to going in and saying, well, I guess we'll use Founders again. I want a Founders Porter. I want an all-day IPA. And every time they go in, that all-day IPA, especially a brewery like Founders, that IPA, all-day IPA is that all-day IPA.
Michigan.
We're really so it's what?
We're doing in West Michigan, everybody expects your beer to basically be the same month to month, or batch to batch or whatever. So that is definitely a little different. But luckily, most of our hardcore customers they know what's going on with wild beer, and so they know what to expect. So
yeah. Well, I mean, you guys are the first all wild brewery there, right? So it's not like you're brewing, an IPA, a pale ale, a porter, and then you go, oh, here's a special release sour beer. It's
every release is different.
This is what we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely both. I am super anal about a lot of things, but I'm learning to let go of that a lot since opening a business and specifically opening a brewery that does wild beer. But I really just embrace it, and I actually kind of like that every batch is super different, and it kind of has to be that way with our model by not having a brew house. You know, I get work from, I don't know, 6 different breweries at this point, and they might all brew the same recipe, but they're all going to be all over the place as far as their numbers, just because they're not brewing with my grain. They're not used to brewing, you know, this recipe or whatever. So one brewer down the street might brew a batch and it comes out at 1041 gravity, and another brewer further down the street will brew the same batch and it'll be 1050. And so I kind of have to work with that variation anyways. So it definitely works for our business plan for now.
Sure. This is a great transition, by the way. I don't even know if you see it yet, but to come back in time to former future, a brewery that went from brewing a smoked porter and a pale ale into all wild beer. You see that?
Yeah.
Drawing connections. So let's go back in time. By the way, actually, so what I love about this beer, and it's incredible that you mashed this beer at 146. You'd think it would have like a much thinner body, but I guess it's that oat and that rye.
Yep, it's oats, rye, wheat.
That gives it like really full mouthfeel, but it's dry. I don't know how much rye you use, but I pick up a lot of that earthy, like pepperiness that you get with rye beers.
Yeah.
It's a really cool beer, and I like the acidity. So maybe I'm happy that I got the batch that the pH dropped a little more, because it's a really enjoyable beer. The scary thing about it is it's over 7% alcohol, because I could see myself drinking a lot of this and then not being able to stand up.
The ABV is kind of drifted up. So the idea behind the whole beer was genetic drift. Is basically you pitch all these yeasts and microbes in the first batch and then use them all over again in the next one and the next one, and see where the yeast takes the beer. So that's the whole idea behind the beer, is just to let it go. So because of that, and because of the inconsistency, our ABV has crept up as we've gotten further attenuation. So they started about 6.5, and they've crept up all the way to 7.4. And now I'm working on consciously backing it down below 7.
What is it finishing at? I mean, it's a really nice crisp.
They finish. It always finishes at 1 or below.
Yeah.
Usually goes into the bottle at 1. And then and that's not 1 degree. That's specific gravity, 1.000.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's pretty dry, and we found I started carving to 2.4 in the bottle, knowing that it would continue to ferment and get more carbonated over time. And that's definitely been true. Like if you open a batch 1 that was released 7 months ago, it is super lively, and I really like that about it.
Yeah.
But so because we, are making this kind of beer and intending on people to age it, I kind of have to carb on the lower end, for the release, knowing that
it's going to continue.
Tons of people are going to throw in their cellar, and I don't want corks like flying out everywhere.
Even when I pulled the cage off of this guy, the cork goes beep. It kind of popped up, And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's a little scary for sure. That's like what keeps me up at night is like, I don't know, carbonation issues really.
I'm at my parents' house, and I'm like at their kitchen like island, and they have like a really nice kitchen with like this really beautiful light above it. And I see the cork go up. I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to buy him a light.
Well, I'm glad it didn't destroy the light. That's good.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I mean, it's got a really beautiful effervescence to it, and I'm really enjoying it. I got to slow down. I think I'm enjoying it, but. All right, so how do you go from homebrew store expert to? And I know there's like a funny backstory where I guess you were out out with your dad and hopped a plane to go interview, and
Boy, you
5-mile walk uphill both ways back to the airport in the
get
snow.
or you talked to James. You must have talked to James.
I didn't even talk to James. I said, let me go at this alone, and I'm going to research and research. You see that? I got a staff. Obviously, we can afford a staff. I'm sitting here in my parents' closets, basically, and I got my staff on it.
The story goes that I was hunting in the Manistee National Forest here in Michigan, it's northern Lower Peninsula, and my wife had already moved to Denver. We decided that we were just going to move there, and I was going to try to get in the beer industry. And she's a social worker, so she got a job like immediately. So I applied to all these breweries. Basically, nobody got back to me. But this one brewery, former feature, who, they were really small, they weren't open yet. They got back to me. Sarah did, and she said, we really would like to interview you. That was her email. And so I didn't even I responded to her and I was like, I'll be in town in 3 days or something like that. So as soon as I got that email, I had 1 bar of service on my shitty old cell phone. And I booked flights right there in the woods. I was drunk. I remember I drank 4 Dirty Bastards and I smoked a big cigar, which I never smoke. I don't smoke. So smoking a whole cigar, I was just loopy. Plus the drink. So I booked the flights.
Hunting, drunk, and cigar buzzed.
I mean, no, I wasn't hunting. I was it was post-hunting. I was around the fire. I didn't have a gun in my hands or anything like that.
I'm surprised your dad's still here.
It was all post-hunting. I wasn't doing them all at the same time. So I booked the flight. I flew into Denver because I really wanted to see my wife. I hadn't seen her in 5 weeks. So it was a good excuse to just go see my wife again. And so I flew into Denver, had my first interview. It went really great. And I thought I had the job in the bag pretty much immediately because Sarah and I hit it off right away.
She is awesome.
She is awesome.
I love her.
So we hit it off immediately. And we just talked, and I felt a lot of the time you go in for an interview and you're like, oh, this is so awkward. It's unbearably awkward.
Yeah.
This one was not. I felt like I had known her for a long time. So we hit it off.
She interviewed you, not James.
James was out at Home Depot or something like that. And he came back all frazzled because during my interview, he came in the door. It was towards the end of the interview. And he was just screaming and excited. And he's like, we just got our federal brewer's notice. So he got they got it while I was there interviewing.
Nice.
So yeah, it was pretty crazy. But so I went home feeling pretty confident. They asked me to come back for a second interview, but my flight was that night. Went to the airport, and I forgot my keys at the apartment. So long story short, I missed my flight. I also booked the wrong flight because I was doing it on my old shitty cell phone. So I booked it for the following week, not realizing that it was the wrong day. So that was super unfortunate. I missed my flight, but then I was like, hey, I can stay in Denver for another week because my next flight is whenever.
Oh shucks, terrible.
Yeah. So there was a blizzard that night. We got 12 inches of snow or something like that. And I walked out the door the next morning to go to my interview at Former Feature. And I was going to take the bus, I remember. So I was walking to the bus stop, and I could see the bus stop off in the distance. And there was a bus that I was going to miss coming down the road. And it tried to stop, and it just slid for hundreds of feet. It just went right through a light, right through the bus stop. And you could tell the bus driver was like, well, we're just going to keep going now because they totally missed it. So as soon as I saw that, I was like, there's no way in hell I'm taking a bus or any transportation right now. So I just looked up directions there and I just walked. I had old beat up tennis shoes on. There's like, you know, a ridiculous amount of snow and ice on the sidewalk and on the road.
That's the employee that I want.
Yeah. As soon as I walked in the door, they were like, "Holy shit! Did you walk?" Like they knew. They looked at me and they're like, "Did you walk here?" It's like, yeah, I did. You know, I was like, I basically played it cool. I was like, in Michigan, this is like every day in the winter. I don't normally walk 5 miles every single day in Michigan, so yeah, they hired me somehow.
If they didn't hire you, I mean,
they knew I was dedicated. They're like, "Man, that's a job."
That's one of the best stories ever. I mean, you're already nervous enough going into the interview, but seeing the bus.
Oh yeah, I just
like you have 5 miles to think. Was that foreshadowing about how this interview is going to go?
Basically, yes. No, I didn't really. I was thinking about like how not to die. I saw like 3 accidents, legitimately, like 2 T-bones and then one other like fender bender or something on that walk. It was just insane.
You get there, and you're like, I know you're not going to give me the job. Just tell me so I can start walking.
Yeah. So I don't have to walk anymore.
I can see Sarah being the one to interview you.
Yeah.
James, I feel like James is way too creative. Like meaning like he's. Does that make sense to you?
They both definitely are, but Sarah, that was definitely her role. You know, still is like
she can cut more to the chase. I feel like, right?
She's the connector. She just connects people. You know, she's definitely the natural one to interview. James was in the second interview though.
Oh, that's intimidating.
The second interview went the personal interaction went really well, but what they asked me to do was taste a beer completely blind. And they had Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Yeah.
They poured it for me into a glass. They had me go off and smell it and drink it and then come back and present it to them completely blind without knowing what the beer was.
Wow.
So I completely, you know, I was flustered because it's an interview.
And you just walked 5 miles and witnessed 3 people die.
Yeah, and I had been drinking coffee, so all these excuses. I should have known what beer was. So I presented it to them as a German blonde ale, which you know doesn't technically exist. But they were like, your presentation was okay. So they hired me. I don't know why, but they still hired me after I completely botched the style. You know, the most classic style in America.
You took the most iconic beer in American brewing.
And I ruined it. I just completely botched it. But they hired me, so it's all good. I'm here now because of that. So.
Yeah, so that is really, see, the fact that they had to do that, that's why I think that's why I love them, because that's a really interesting approach. You know, like that's not, what can you brew for me? Can you go to the brew house and show me your That's like,
they didn't
present this beer.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, hearing that, that's why I think their beers resonate so much with me, because their focus is on that, like, what are we going to get? And James is the consummate, like, you know, sees every angle of everything.
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty. So you started with Former Future when they got their brewing license. So you were brewing those clean beers with them.
Yep. I went in for the way I got started as a professional brewer is I think I was the only one that they hired that really had like home brewing experience or any brewing experience at all. And so James on the first brew day was like, well, I need help. And so they just called me and asked if I wanted to come in and help James for free, you know, just like, hey, do you want to come in and help James brew? And I was like, yeah, I'd rather do that. They hired me as a bartender, by the way. So for them to ask me to come in and help James brew, you know, a month before they opened, I was like, yeah, that's really what I want to be doing anyways. So yeah, I went in for the first batch, and then he's like, well, we're brewing again tomorrow. And I was like, I'll be here. And so I did that for a couple weeks, and then they're like, well, we'll start paying you to brew now, I guess. So I was like the assistant brewer for a couple more months or whatever. And then eventually I got the hang of the system myself. And they're like, well, I guess you're now the brewer.
Yeah, James like, I don't want to do that shit.
Yeah. Well, he just didn't like, I don't think they realized how much like stupid administrative work you have to do when you own a business. Like you have to do the marketing, the promotions, you have to do the running the tap room. I mean, it's just an insane amount of work. I'm only open one day a month, and it's an insane amount of administrative work.
Right.
So James just got sucked into doing all that stuff, and I brewed because that's really what I wanted to do anyways. So it really, seriously, it worked out perfectly for us. And I brewed mostly James's recipes. So eventually I was homebrewing still at the time. So I'd bring him in like a pilot batch or something like that. And occasionally we'd incorporate one of those pilot batches into a batch at Former Future. But for the most part, I was just like brewing every day, brewing James, salted caramel porter and the Counting House cream ale. And what else? We had an India Pale Lager that we brewed, regular old beer.
Were you part of the push into wild beer that James was like secretly doing at this time, or?
I mean, I don't know if I was a part of it. I mean, James and I, one of the best things about that time in my life is James and I were both super into wild fermentation. He knew way more about it than I did, still does. But we constantly, every single day, we would just bounce ideas off of each other. Mostly, he would have a crazy idea because he has all kinds of crazy ideas. And he needs to speak them out loud to somebody for them to say, that's a crazy idea, you should do it. That's a crazy idea, you shouldn't do it. Or, whatever.
I feel like if you tell him you shouldn't do it, it's going to fuel him to do it even more.
Yep, definitely. I learned that about James. So whenever I wanted James to do something, I challenged him to do it. I told him I didn't want him to do it. So, yeah, I learned how to interact with him. But that's we just constantly bounced ideas off of each other. And he had this idea in his head. He wanted to have a cool ship for Former Future before, they did a Kickstarter that almost succeeded, but it didn't, for a cool ship. And so he was definitely planning on doing sour beer from the beginning. And I just happened to be there and helped him brew almost all of them, because that's what I did.
Cool. What brought your attention, or I guess what brought you? I mean, because look, you only produce wild beer. I mean, what got you to that point? And was it like, so you're brewing all these clean beers, you've home brewed, I'm assuming, a lot of clean beer.
Tons, yeah.
And so what got you to the point where you're like, well, I'm going to open a brewery, and not only am I going to open a brewery, I'm not going to brew. I'm going to produce these beers that are sour beer or wild beer, which is a term that we could discuss for hours. How do we refer to these beers? What got you to that point? Because now your brewery is hot, man, and then all you're doing is these beers. So.
So I guess the number one contributing factor to that would be my conversations with James. He knew the whole time. I told him at my first interview that I was going to leave and start a brewery. So it's like, you guys have to be okay with that. If you do decide to hire me, like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to start a brewery in Michigan. Don't know what it's going to be. I have no idea. I had a business plan written at that time too. But it was for a totally different concept. But I was looking for experience, and just like James gave me the experience, James and Sarah did, and we continuously bounced ideas off of each other about like, well, we got our first Hoover tank in, and James is like, well, I want to start a brewery that's all Hoover tanks, basically, buy work from somebody, ferment in the Hoover tank, package it, sell it. And at the time, we were both bartending a lot, James and I, because it was only me, James, and Sarah for like a year. We did all the bartending, brewing, everything. So we hated bartending. We were bad at it. It exhausted me. So I was like, how do we do a brewery without like constant personal interaction?
Yeah.
And so it was like, well, monthly bottle releases. So like all these ideas over the years kind of compiled into my business plan. So every time James would give me an idea or I would talk to him about an idea, I would incorporate it into my business plan, usually that day or the next weekend. And so my business plan went from being like all session beers, clean beers, like kind of a backwoods brewery on a river. Mm-hmm. So more like recreational themed, hiking, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So it went from that, just slowly incorporating like sour beer, getting rid of the tap room, getting rid of the brewery. I just started chopping things out of the business plan until we got to the point where we're like, wow, we can actually fund this ourselves. Like,
yeah, see, that's amazing. I mean,
we cut everything. We cut everything that we could possibly cut.
Yeah, but look, now you're growing. I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm not complaining at all. But it's just, that was kind of the process of how we figured out what the hell we were going to do. Mostly interaction from James, bouncing ideas off of him, my dad, my mom, my wife, and like 30 revisions of our business plan. Or more, probably more than that.
Nice. I mean, let me tell you something. As somebody who's opening a brewery now as well, the fact that you stripped it down to a point where you could fund it yourself is huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be a major monkey off your back, right? I mean,
they gave us a lot. It restricted us in a lot of ways because we didn't have money. But those restrictions really, I think, make the beer what it is now. It forced me to kind of figure out how to do things this way. So, it really, like, I don't know, having those parameters really helped us decide what we were going to do.
It's cool. Now, I want to get to Speciation because we talked to James a couple weeks ago, and enough with them. Seriously, they've had enough of our attention over here. So let's get into, I guess. You're leaving now, and you're saying, I'm going to start the brewery I came here to start. Or I guess the brewery that told you I was going to start.
Yeah.
Was there, and you said you wanted to open it back home, I guess. Why was there always this push to open it back home? I've read some stuff that you said the market was ready for it. There was nothing else like you in the market, which is important, I guess. What else? Was there anything else that drew you back home, or was that it?
Definitely. There's a lot of reasons why we moved back. I miss Colorado like every single day.
Yeah.
But from the beginning, we knew we had to move back because we couldn't afford to stay in Colorado forever. As a brewer, you don't really make that much money. As a social worker, you don't really make that much money, and Denver is crazy, crazy expensive. So we knew we couldn't stay there long term just because of that. So that factor, and then also we knew we wanted to start a family at some point, or we thought we wanted to start a family, and we didn't want to do that away from our, both of our families are from this area, so
it makes it easier.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So that was a big reason, and then the number one reason definitely was that by the time we decided, okay, we're for sure going to open a brewery. A sour brewery specifically, we saw that nobody was going to open a sour brewery in Grand Rapids, or at least if they did, it'd be a long ways down the road. And living in Denver and traveling to California and a bunch of other sour beer centric places, we realized that like wild beer was going to be a pretty big thing in the beer, world. So I thought just the timing was perfect.
I think it's going to set people apart. I mean, you think about it. I mean, there's no other beer style that's going to allow people to express terroir as much as this kind of beer, And so, open fermentation, wild cultures. I mean, you're expressing a time and a place, just like wine does. And wine.
Oh, we use locally grown grain as well in every batch. So. Like almost 100% of the grain in every batch now is grown in Michigan.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's cool.
I was very hesitant to start that way, so I didn't. I started with Avant-Garde and Swan Pills. Those were both great, and I knew that they were great going into that, and so I didn't want the additional variable of local grain too, because it could be, who knows what you're going to get from it.
Sure.
So yeah, we started our first like 10 batches were all basically avant-garde. But so yeah, we threw that in there too, just for, why not? It's way more expensive, but honestly, it's something that is being a, terroir driven brewery, I guess. That was one of our priorities. So
yeah. Yeah, I say this in all the interviews too, but I mean, I think breweries like yours, where they're focused on that community, expressing time and place, Scratch, for example, Plan B up in New York. I think these are the breweries. Jester King down in Austin is probably for me right now the best example, because they've been able to take that approach and just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and really kind of exploit, or not even, I don't know if they're exploiting, but I guess really.
Because you're using it to your advantage.
Yeah, he's representing the concept that the small neighborhood brewery, the community brewery, the brewery that expresses this area, can thrive. And I think it's exciting. Are breweries like that kind of like, were they kind of like motivating positive factors for you when you're saying, oh shit, here I am going into clean beer territory, and I'm going to be the only guy doing this?
Yeah. No, they were definitely super influential on that. All the breweries you listed, Jolly Pumpkin as well, Wicked Weed back then. There's a lot of Jolly Pumpkin was probably the biggest influence on us, which ironically enough, they're Michigan brewery.
Yeah.
But they're my favorite brewery. So, definitely drew a lot of influence from their, showcasing of terroir.
How many base batches of, like, how many base beers are you producing at this point to come up with the offerings that you've got so far?
Well, we've got Genetic Drift Base, which is our farmhouse. We've got Incipient, which is our sour golden base. We have Cultigen, which we haven't released yet. That's our like dark sour, I guess, base. It's not like black. It's just kind of like a dark brown sour. And then we have Stasis. Oh, no, not Stasis. Genetic Erosion, which is like a big 9% black farmhouse ale. That's it right now, but I'm working on a couple other bases as well, just to have additional variety.
Sure.
Almost everything we release is Incipient and Genetic Drift, basically. For now. I think we just brewed today batch 10 of Incipient, and we're on batch 6 of Genetic Drift. So that's just like a example of how much we've produced.
Cool. Now you were saying that there's variation between, like, the brewery that produces the work for you, maybe the time it was produced. I guess this may be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask anyways. How much importance does blending play into your final product here?
It depends on the beer. Yeah, it really depends on the beer. Most of our batches so far have been single batch, so no blending. They go in the tank, they ferment, we bottle it, we age it in the bottle, and then we sell it. So it's all one batch. We have had a number of small batches that we blended from various barrels. But I'd say to date, 90% of our beer has been all stainless.
Okay.
Never touched oak. So
this beer right here has never touched oak?
Never touched oak.
Wow.
It's in stainless for how long? That batch was in stainless for probably 6 weeks, and then bottled, and has been in bottles for almost 2 months now. And that's kind of the way we like it. It's about 3+ months of aging before it's released is our preference. So they're relatively quick turning farmhouse and wild beers.
Yeah, that is pretty quick.
The low mash temp and the high knockout temp helps fermentation and acidification go really, really quickly. So yeah, they're quick. They're designed to be quick turnaround beers though. But now we're into the territory where I'm so far ahead in the brewing schedule that just because we're so far ahead, these beers are going to age, more into the 6-month territory before they're released. And then back to your original question, blending. We're also buying a ton of oak, and just in preparation for all the spontaneous beer that we're going to brew. So I'm buying a ton of oak right now, and I don't want it to just sit empty. So basically, I buy it and I rinse the barrel, and then I fill it with, you know, incipient base, the golden sour base, or genetic drift, just as a holding tank. You know, might as well use it. And
yeah, of course.
That's really what we're doing with those right now. And so by the time it's winter here and I can actually brew spontaneous beer, I'm basically going to empty those barrels, clean them as best as I can, and then start filling with spontaneous work. So
how many I guess oak barrels are you up to right now? How much?
Let's see. Probably we just got a shipment in, so we're probably at about 45 to 50 barrels. And they're about, I don't know, 20 or less are bourbon barrels or tequila barrels, and then the rest are red wine barrels, used red wine.
What is your approach with spirit barrels? I know that's a big thing for people who, you know, when people produce wild beer, they think neutral oak, or wine, because the kind of character plays into a lot of the notes that you get, the minerality and the tannins play into some of the wild beer, the yeast and bacteria's inherent characteristics. When you add spirit barrels in, are you noticing? Are you treating that differently? Is your approach different? Is that another blending thing? Maybe
that's definitely a blending thing. That's one area where blending has played a huge part. Is typically I don't like to have, when I do a beer that's aged in spirit barrels, it's usually spends a very little amount of time in the barrel.
Sure.
Usually like 3 to 5 weeks probably, based on taste. And so we had some fresh bourbon barrels, and I ended up blending. So this was for our genetic erosion, our like big black saison. I aged two of the barrels were fresh maple syrup bourbon barrels, and then 4 of them were neutral maple syrup bourbon barrels.
Cool.
So I blended all 6 of those barrels together, and so the end product was something that had bourbon notes and maple notes and that kind of stuff, but it wasn't like really intense bourbon.
Sure.
If all those barrels would have been fresh, you would not have tasted the base beer whatsoever. It would have been bourbon.
Right.
Especially because my beer is all super, super dry. So there's no body to back up that kind of alcohol heat, really.
Right.
You know, like KBS can get away with it because the finishing gravity is really high.
Yeah, it finishes near what you start at.
Yeah, seriously, yeah. Some of my beers definitely, but so yeah, I that's one definite. You know, I like to blend beers from spirit barrels so that you can actually taste the base beer instead of just overwhelming spirit. One exception to that is we got some tequila barrels in, and I just filled them all, and they all went into one batch. So that is definitely an exception, but that's because I felt like the tequila flavor was in balance with the rest of the beer.
Yeah.
So I just went ahead and blended them all. So.
Do you have your wife come taste barrels with you before you start blending? There's a whole theory out there that women have better palates than we do. So
he definitely has a better palate than I do. And honestly, I don't have her come in to taste barrels enough. I should have her come in more. She's pregnant. We're actually due in like 3 weeks.
Okay. So she hasn't tasted the recent batches.
Yeah, she hasn't really tasted she's taken like sips of stuff, but
yeah.
She really hasn't drank any of our beer since we opened. She's had just a couple ounces here and there. That's it. So, it's going to be tough because I have to decide what our GABF beers are going to be by next Thursday. And I know she has a better palate than I do, so I have an idea of where I want to place all these beers, but I need her to come in here and luckily she's in her 3rd trimester, so she can have like 3 ounces and be okay. But maybe she'll just take a sip and spit it out or something. But I need her feedback. I don't, I'm not as good as her. So, I mean, I know what I like, but like some off flavors don't bother me nearly as much as they bother her. So
that's important, man. That's James and Sarah having to go back and tell them that Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is a German Golden.
Yeah. Oh man, we had team meetings with James and Sarah all the time, and we like so many intense disagreements about because Sarah always had a better palate, and James and I would taste something and be like, "That's pretty damn good," and she'd be like, "No, it's awful. Like it tastes like." We'd be like, no, "Okay, we don't think so. Let's package it and sell it." So yeah, we'd get ourselves into a lot of trouble. But yeah, so anyways, enough about James and Sarah. I should have Whitney in here more often, definitely.
Yeah, I'm saying, man, I'm saying. So what's sitting behind you right now in those boxes?
Those are the batches that we're releasing this Saturday. So
are those sold out already?
No, they're actually all of those are still available. There's basically a Brett IPA. I didn't really know what to call it. It's really not an IPA, but like
it's a hoppy farmhouse ale.
Exactly. People like specifically around here, but also in general, they know what IPA is.
Right.
They don't really like if I sold this as a hoppy farmhouse, it'd be like, well, I don't like hops or whatever. So it's a tough balance. I don't really know what to call these things yet. We're still working on that. If I had I'd just call it a hoppy farmhouse ale or something like that.
See, but that's the problem with these beers, I mean, that's the hook with calling it a farmhouse ale that people weren't into is you can call it a farmhouse ale, and then what does that mean? And so you got to figure out a way to describe it even further.
It's really tough. We've been struggling with it since we opened, and I've noticed that different beers sell very differently based on just how I brand them.
Right.
And people don't know us.
But I love this freedom though, because I think it's brewers like you they're going to be pushing American craft beer. People that aren't constrained by strict guidelines. It's like I brewed this beer because I love the way it tastes. I love the concept that I came up with, and then the hard part now is figuring out a way for people who don't necessarily aren't as big into this style as I am. Getting a way to get them to understand it, so conceptualizing it as a style. That's going to be the challenge.
You can just try it, in the first place. It's sometimes difficult to get people to even try a wild beer because you describe it to them and they're like, "Oh, why would I want to drink that? Like it sounds awful." And then you give them a taste of it, and like in my experience, talking to a person like that, I'll give them a taste of the beer. 9 out of 10 times, they'll be like, "That was ridiculously good." Almost
You should tell those same people to go read like wine experts tasting notes on the world's best wines. I mean, it's like Grass, Garden Hose, Wet Rock are things that I've read. And these are these are bottles of wine people pay $1,000 for.
Yeah,
so for us to say something like Barnyard or Hey, it shouldn't or like.
I use the word.
I got a question. Yeah. I got a question from Gus Adkison, our buddy at Farmhouse Obsession.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to ask you about your fruiting rate. How do you decide how much fruit you're putting into your different beers?
So we're still experimenting, obviously. We just opened and we've only released 3 or 4 fruited beers so far. So in the off season, I use mostly concentrate from a place here in Michigan called Coloma Frozen Foods. I highly recommend them, especially for their blackcurrant concentrate. But really, like everything that they have is super high quality. It's not cheap though; it's really, really expensive. But you get higher yields from your beer from it too, so that definitely helps. So for the blackcurrant, I did 5 gallons of concentrate and 6 barrels of beer. And then we've actually increased our fruiting rate for concentrates a little bit. So now when I make a beer with concentrate, I'll do basically 1 gallon of concentrate per barrel of beer. So slightly increased from the blackcurrant level of fruit. Now that's just with concentrates. I also use Oregon fruit products occasionally. They're purees. This is based on availability, what I think is going to be best for the beer, that kind of stuff. So for the Oregon fruit stuff, they come in like, I don't know, little cardboard packages. I think they're 5 gallons a piece. I typically use 4 of those for 1 10-barrel batch. And that gives me really good but balanced fruit flavor. So you can still taste the base beer, but it's obviously very fruity. So in Michigan, we are just getting into fruit season. So I'm going to be really experimenting with fruiting rates over the next month. Well, really the next like 3 or 4 months, because we have a pretty long season here. But it's cherries right now. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to get a whole load of cherries. And I'll probably do 1.5 to 2 pounds per gallon of cherries. Yeah. We made a rhubarb beer about a month ago, and I did how many pounds of rhubarb?
A lot.
300 pounds of rhubarb to 10 barrels. So a ridiculous, 1 pound per gallon of rhubarb. Which is a decent amount because rhubarb takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So the way we did the rhubarb was we froze it, we cleaned it, chopped it up, throw it in freezer bags, threw it in a freezer, froze it for about a week, and then we took it all out, thawed it, and pressed it in a wine press. And so we got basically 30 gallons of juice, and we just added that juice right to the fermenter.
Cool.
And we got pretty decent rhubarb flavor. I'm still going to increase the level next year to probably about 450 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm also probably going to boil that down into a concentrate and add the concentrate to the final product. I really like concentrates. I don't know if you can pick up on that.
Why concentrate over fruit puree or?
It depends on the fruit, obviously. Like some fruits are definitely better as a whole fruit. But for me, you get a really intense fruit flavor from concentrate. And I don't know, as much as I like to embrace the variation in my beer, sometimes there's something to be said about just putting in a really good, high quality product into the beer. And I really feel that way about the blackcurrant in particular. Blackcurrant, if you use whole blackcurrants, it'll drop your pH like crazy. But if you use concentrate, it's actually going to drop your pH a lot less. I have no idea why, but that's been my personal experience and the experience of a lot of other brewers I've talked to.
Interesting.
But I don't know. It's just different fruits, different methods, different availability. I don't have access to everything here, so
sure,
all over the place. For cherries, we're just going to experiment. Grapes, we're going to do an absurd amount of grapes. I think he said 1 ton. Yeah, 1 ton of grapes will go into one of our batches here. So that'll end up being a 20-barrel batch. So yeah, 1 ton is a ridiculous amount of fruit. It's a ridiculous amount of fruit.
Yeah. How many Hoovers are you going to fill with that?
2 Hoovers. It's gonna be crazy.
You're a huge fan of those Hoovers. I notice a lot of breweries as I go across the country. A lot of brewers are using those Hoovers.
Yeah, all for wild beer. I mean, I have 6 of them here, and my total bill every month is like $300, and I lease them, so it's like $300 and something every month. So very affordable fermentation space, and you can stack them. Which makes a huge difference. Just your available space at your brewery too. Yeah, they're great. I probably sent like 30 customers Hoover's way just because, I people know me for a lot of stupid things, including my love of my forklift, and my love of Hoovers. So because of that, because of all my Instagram posts, people ask me all the time, like, how do I get these Hoovers? And I'm like, well, you can call the number on the side of the Hoover, and they'll hook you up. So yeah, it's I've sent a ridiculous amount of people their way because they just work really well for this. Not for everybody, but they work really well for what I'm doing.
So what's up with the Hoovers? I mean, or the forklift? Everyone always talks about forklifts anytime you post anything.
I don't know that. I have no idea how this happened, but I probably did it to myself. Mostly in Milk the Funk, the Facebook group. There's a lot of process questions on Milk the Funk from professional brewers, and usually my canned response was just use a forklift or something like that. And I didn't notice that I was doing this, but
here we go. Look at this. Here's the post, right? Look at the first comment. Forklift.
Nice. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It's just like a natural thing, and people started like making fun of me for my love of the forklift, and instead of getting mad about it, I just embraced it. So now I try to like sneak the forklift in basically every post I make somewhere. I should just start a hashtag like forklift life or something like that.
If you make a shirt, I'll buy it. So
that's a really good idea. Oh shit, I'm gonna do that.
A speciation shirt with a forklift life.
That is brilliant. That's brilliant.
You should put like, you want to get really cool. Forklift life with a Y.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Forklift for life.
Yeah. Or that.
Yeah. This is getting out of hand.
Oh man.
This is why people know
it's getting crazy. Let me ask you something else.
Yeah.
A lot of big-time brewers are just bringing up speciation when they're speaking in crowds.
Apparently.
In breweries.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Where did that come from?
I have no idea. Most recent
Who
one,
did you?
Greg Cook from Stone.
That's one of the people I'm referring to.
Yeah, he was in town in Grand Rapids, and I think he had like a meal at Hopcat because that's where all the big brewers go when they're in town, because it's Hopcat. And so he had a meal there, and I guess the beer buyer or somebody there was like, hey, you got to check out this beer from this tiny little brewery in town that, is more or less a one-man show that just does whatever the hell he wants. And Greg was like, okay. And he tried it, and he's like, wow, apparently this is really good. And so then everywhere he went in town, people were like, hey, you should try this beer from this guy. And so by the end of the night, I think he had like 5 cups of coffee and like many, many beers. But so he was like, oh, I don't know. He was awesome. I love talking to him, but he had to give like the speech at this local bar, Logan's Alley. And he just, for some reason, decided to reference us.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. Lots of people got it on camera because, it's, the founder of Stone.
Yeah.
Big deal. So it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe that he even brought it up or thought to talk about me. He did an interview later, and he talked about why craft beer is so awesome right now. And he was like, well, I'm drinking this beer from Speciation right now, and this is a perfect example of why craft beer is so great. It's because this guy, a couple of years ago, nobody would have bought this shit. Like nobody, because nobody would have known what it is. Nobody would have, thought that just a dude in his warehouse could make this crazy beer. So yeah, he's like, now people have wisened up and they know that this exists, and this guy can start a brewery, kind of a brewery, and do whatever he wants, and people will buy it. He's like, this is a good reason, this is why craft beer is great. And I think that was a really good point, and I'd never even really thought about that. But from his perspective, as Stone, they probably haven't had a ton of freedom to just do whatever they want. So the crazy little guys like me who we don't give a shit. Like we just do whatever and hope that people are going to buy it. It's people like us that are really like pushing boundaries, not to like toot my own horn or anything like that, but it's just like, I'm referring to all the small breweries who are just doing whatever.
It's true.
So it was pretty cool to hear him talk about us in that way. And that we shared that post on Facebook, and it got like 10 times more views than any other thing I'd ever posted.
Yeah, because it's not cool. It's awesome. That is amazing.
I can't even really believe it. I'm still like in shock. Can't believe that happened. But it was pretty fun.
I mean, talk about a ringing endorsement, because I mean that guy is, Stone's massive, and their integrity is still 100% there. And it's for that guy to be saying that's pretty cool. So needless to say, I guess that means that you've been embraced in Clean Beer Town.
Apparently. It's funny because a lot of my customers are brewers from the area that don't get to brew sour beer.
Yeah.
Like seriously, a good percentage of my customers are those brewers who are brewing clean beers, and they're like,
"That's funny,
something wild." So yeah, the clean brewers have definitely embraced us, at least around.
That's cool.
Apparently, other parts of the country too.
That's cool. What do we have on the horizon for Speciation? We got any plan? Well, you mentioned more oak. Playing with grapes more.
Yes. Two varieties of grapes. I mean, I'd say fruited sour beers really pay the bills here. They allow me to do basically whatever I want as far as my next couple of batches. So that really allows me to buy more oak, expand production, that kind of stuff. So because people really like their fruited sours, I am going to make more of them and a bigger variety, and probably bigger batches by next year too. So that's on the horizon. One really big fun project that I've been working on for a really long time is we're temporarily calling it the Laurentian Spontaneous Series. But it's kind of a spin-off or side project similar to what James did with Black Project, that basically just focuses on spontaneously fermented beer, except with a little bit of a twist. We're working on getting a mobile cool ship up and running so that we can go to each of the Great Lakes, brew a batch of beer there, let it sit out next to the lake, drive it back to Grand Rapids the next day, and ferment it. So that's a huge project we've been working on, and it's a logistical nightmare. But I think that it'll be really cool to see what the end result is, to have all these different terroirs essentially in barrels.
Yeah, it's cool.
I have no idea if any of them are going to be good. I have no clue. So I brewed one of them last winter. We went up to Marquette and brewed at Ordock Brewing. And I just used 2 hoovers, stuck them right next to each other, filled them up about halfway, and let them sit out overnight. And that beer, cool. I tasted it once. It was weird, but good. But it's still super, super young. So we'll see where it goes from there. But we're going to try to just brew all the Great Lakes this winter. So that's a cool project we've got on the horizon.
It's a really cool project. And it creates somewhat of a collectible item for people too that are fans of your brewery.
Definitely. Yeah, we're definitely going for that. All of our beers are kind of in that realm already of like weird collectible, gotta catch them all kind of thing. But this one in particular, we're really going for like, it's naturally super limited based on, we had to drive 400 miles to make this beer. More than that, 600 miles or something crazy. So yeah, those will be very expensive because they have to be, but it's just going to be such a fun project, I think. So that's
cool.
That's really about it. I mean, expanded oak program, lots of fruited sours, spontaneous beers. It's really what we're going to focus on in the next year. And then also, I really want to open a tap room too. So, you know, right now we haven't talked about this at all. Really, we've touched on it, but right now we essentially are open 1 day a month. People reserve bottles the first Saturday of every month, and then bottle pickup day is the second Saturday of every month. And that's the only day we're open right now.
Yeah.
You can pick up whatever bottles you reserved. We've got, you know, maybe 4 or 5 different beers that you can get an 8-ounce pour of, or you can just sample them for free. So that's kind of how we function right now, and it works and it pays the bills. But with expanded production, I'd really like to open a tasting room. So just makes a lot of sense for what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's definitely,
I'd
like to have that done by the end of next year, probably.
Cool. That's a really great thing too, because people are going to want to go and from out of town eventually. Was the more these brewers continue to sing your praises, you know, people are going to want to travel, and you know,
it blows my mind. It blows my mind. I'm like, every time something like this happens, I'm like, I'm just like this dumb nerd that just obsesses over weird things. So I can't really believe that people are reacting like that, but it's cool. I'm not complaining about it. It's just so weird.
So the last thing I want to talk about before we part ways here is your world ranking early on. How did that feel?
That also felt weird. On Facebook, I tend to rant about a lot of things. Untappd is probably my #1 thing that I rant about, because I really hate it. Just so deeply, I hate it. But I mean, we could talk about that for an hour about how much I don't like Untappd. But at the same time, as a business owner, it is a very valuable tool. So a couple months into opening, you need 1,000 ratings to get onto the top, you know, whatever, top 50 list. And it took us a while to get there, but about 2.5 months into opening, we got enough rankings to get on that list. And I think we debuted at like number 22 or 23 or something like that, which I didn't expect in my wildest dreams. I didn't expect to be on that list anywhere. So that kind of blew my mind. And then our rankings started to get better and better until we got to like 13 or something like that. Yeah. And at that point, as much as I say I don't like Untappd or I hate Untappd or whatever, I was checking it every day. I was like, I'd get up in the morning, I'd wake up randomly at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning and I'd be like, oh, I wonder where we are now. And just checking. So yeah, I'm totally guilty of that, but I just got addicted to it. So yeah, I think we ended up at like 13 at the highest or something like that, which
there you go.
That's just absurd. Like I don't deserve that. I looked at the breweries that were underneath us and I was like, there's no way in hell we deserve to be on that list. Like they are all better than us. But at the same time, every time we went up in our rankings, we posted about it on our Facebook page or something like that. Of course,
you deserve to.
And you know, you got to use it to your advantage. So
and you deserve it. You deserve to do that. So.
No, but I'll use it. So I don't know where we are right now. I do not check Untappd very often anymore because we started dropping.
Yeah.
As soon as you start getting a wider reach, your ranking inherently drops, especially in an area like West Michigan. So, you know, our ranking dropped. I think we're still on the list somewhere. Last I checked was like a week and a half ago, and we were right underneath Black Project. Literally, it was Black Project and then us. And I took a picture of it and texted it to James and Sarah, and I was like, come on. Like, we're so close.
Oh, that's awesome. That's coming full circle right there.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It was pretty funny to just randomly check in on it after like a month and see that we're right next to Black Project.
That's so cool. I'm sure that made them proud too, because
I hope
you can tell how much respect James and Sarah have for you still. Even at CBC, I was talking to James saying, hey, where are we going to hang out? And he's like, we got to hang out with Mitch. I got to introduce you to Mitch. We got to meet Mitch. You know, and so That's got to be so cool for you, obviously, but for them too, in a way, because you were a big part of their coming up.
Yeah, and I mean, we just became pretty much best friends, all of us while I was working there. I saw him every day, and we'd work together, and then I'd leave work, and we'd go get beers together or something like that. So
Cool.
pretty much every day we spent tons of time together. And
Cool.
now we don't see each other as often, but because of my connection to Black Project, we've managed to get into, similar festivals as them.
Sure.
Not nearly as many because we just opened.
Right.
But we see them at least every couple months based on festivals that we're attending that, they're also at, and also some collaborations and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, still see it, thankfully.
That's so I guess to sum it up, this has been an amazing year, to say the least, for you.
Been crazy.
Yeah, and the future looks completely bright. I'm incredibly happy for you.
Thank you.
Excited to see what you guys have in store for the future. More fruit's never a bad thing. More oaks, never a bad thing. So maybe Untappd, your ranking will start to climb again.
I can tell every time we release a fruited sour, as opposed to this month we're releasing a Saison, an IPA, and a tiny winter Weiss, and I know our ranking is going to drop. Next month we're releasing 4 sours. Big, crazy fruited sours. And it's going to skyrocket. Honestly, whether the beer's good or not, it's going to skyrocket just because it's sours. So, yeah.
Oh, Untappd. Oh. On that note, this has been an amazing hour and a half already.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And again, I can't say enough. I love this beer. I just drank 750 milliliters myself.
Nice.
You
drink the whole yeast on the bottom?
It's still there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still there.
You might not want to drink all of that yeast. I don't know.
No. I made sure to leave it, so it's there. But I wasn't planning on drinking the whole thing, and I really loved it.
Awesome.
The other beer that I have at home is Incipient, right?
Yep.
With pomegranate, and I can't wait to get into that. So people who are interested in what I think about it, I'm sure I'm going to post about it on Instagram or something. But unless you have any parting words, I think this is where we say goodbye, my friend.
Sounds good to me. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It's a great time. So on that note, everybody, enjoy your weekends. We will post this up on our website, hopefully in the next few days for people who missed it. But cheers, everyone.
Cheers.